So we have about 10 or 15 minutes left, and we notice in your background that you have icebergs, which is an obvious reference to your Titanic book. Can you tell us a little bit about what that book is about and what were your findings?
Sure. So after 20 plus years of teaching entrepreneurship, helping start companies, my wife and I are angel investors as well. We've kind of accumulated this list of challenges, or what we're calling icebergs or debtbergs, that we see entrepreneurs run into. And it's almost a predictable pattern in terms of the challenges that they face in different stages. So one way to address that certainly is through education, to persuade them to become a Kelley student and sit in the classroom. But we decided as an alternative to kind of package these. This was based on a presentation we gave in the venture community around these kind of hidden debts, is what we call them. So hidden debts are like an iceberg. What you see above the surface is only a small representation of the magnitude of the challenge. And obviously, the Titanic was affected by a physical iceberg. So what we've done is to kind of identify these 32 debtbergs in these different categories, or what we call oceans, that are fairly systematically kind of obstacles that entrepreneurs face. So we talk about the human ocean, for example, the people that you work with as co-founders, your investors and advisors, your early employees. What are some of the categories of challenge that you face with them, like how you divide up equity, how you create culture, things like that. And those are things where entrepreneurs often stumble, which comes back either to sink their startup or at least limit their progress later. The other areas are the marketing ocean. So we're your customers and competition, and sorting out how to create a value proposition, how to identify the right problem and be a good listener and experiment. So some of those tools, discovery tools we were talking about earlier. Certainly the technical ocean, so the product itself, or product and service, and how you're developing that, and what are the inputs over time. How do you do that in a way that is not as capital intensive as some entrepreneurs tend to be, where they overbuild before they actually take anything to market. And then finally, the strategy ocean, which kind of connects all of those different pieces. So our book, The Titanic Effect, Successfully Navigating the Uncertainties That Sink Most Startups, the book kind of captures those different areas of uncertainty, and then helps identify certainly the debtbergs or icebergs, but also gives entrepreneurs a plan for navigating around them and hopefully avoiding them to their detriment.
Yeah, it's a very good book, and I'd recommend it. I like the part where you talk about sort of the history of the Titanic and sort of the cumulative effects that eventually wound up with it at the bottom of the ocean, which it's a lot like it reminded me of when things don't go well in medicine. It's typical, or surgery, there are complications or unfortunately deaths. It's typically not just one thing. It's kind of a cascade of things where one bad decision leads to another. And there's multi-system disorganization, and the right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing. And typically it just winds up in a bad result. So I thought that was a good metaphor.
Thanks. In the fewer minutes, Arlen, I don't know if you were aware, earlier this week, news came out that they're allowing explorers to cut into the Titanic to find the Marconi. So using the telegraph was a very new technology at the time. And the Titanic adopted this technology so that its customers, the people who bought tickets, could communicate back home. And the equivalent of Facebook or Twitter today, right? Saying, hey, look, not sending pictures, but I'm on the Titanic. Yay, this is what we had for dinner. Well, the operator was so overwhelmed with requests to send telegraphs outbound that he was ignoring the inbound warnings about icebergs in the area. So one of those many small decisions that led to that cascade.
And I don't know whether you know it or not, but I'm sure you do. The Titanic was built in Belfast at the Titanic Works, which interestingly enough is now a biotech park. So there's more overlap than we realize.